All right, we've got a new #1 in the Tech House charts. Smack Yo out on Solid Grooves Raw, and it's a great track. Let's check it out. Here we go. Starting out with beats and just like an interesting texture, right? Through the intro, you usually just want to have beats because this is where the DJ is going to mix in. But it's nice to have some kind of like texture or track identifier in the intro, just so as a DJ is mixing it in, for example, and people start to know the track, they'll be like, oh yes, I think I know this track. It's kind of similar to like teasing, but not giving it fully away, like a big hook. So if you're sampling something like California Dreamin', the first example that comes to my head, like Chris Lorenzo doesn't give that full hook away. He kind of teases it. And so the people in the crowd are like, this sounds familiar. I think I know what it is. I don't quite know what it is yet. And then finally you get the big hook in the break and they're like, yes. And so here, a similar kind of idea, but it's just teasing a little bit of an identifier. So in the second 8 bars here of the intro, it's the same thing because they're just giving the DJ 16 bars to kind of work with to mix into the song. Okay, so that's the intro, and then this is going to be what's called the HD2 formula. This is 90% of top tracks use the HD2 formula, and it's really simple. We have the intro, we have the bass drop, okay, we have break 1, then we have hook drop 1, okay, HD1, then we have the main break and build, and then we have HD2, which is hook drop 2, and then we just have the outro, okay. And so here coming out of the intro, we're going to move into the bass drop, which is simply where you introduce the bass line. Now, something very typical before you move into the bass drop, you have a little bit of a bigger hook tease. So you just introduce a little piece of the hook, and then that just kind of carries you into the bass drop. So really simple. Just dropping the bass. There's one thing that's a little bit different about this bass drop, and that there's a little bit of a metallic-y kind of hook in there, but it's so simple that it's not that big of a deal. The really important thing about the bass drop is really just to introduce the bass line. We want to teach people how to move and groove to the track before you start throwing hooks on top of it in the hook drops HD1 and HD2. That's what the hook drops are all about, is putting the hooks over the groove. Okay, but in the bass drop here, we're not giving away the hooks yet. Okay, that would be almost like blowing your load, you know, to use a crass analogy. But here it's just not the right place to do it. It'd be blowing your load, just giving everything away right off the bat. But number 2 is like you've got to teach people how to dance to the track. What's the physical movement of this track? What's the rhythm? What's the groove? And then once they understand it, they get it, they know what's going to happen, then you can start throwing things on top, okay? But that's the important thing about a bass drop, is just introduce the bass line, okay? Do the least, just drop the bass line. But one unique thing about this bass drop is that there is this kind of metallic-y kind of texture going on. It feels like a little bit of a hook. But yeah, so let's see. What's going on? Why doesn't this want to play? All right. And it's also following the bass line, but you know the filter's opening up a little bit on it, so it's a little bit of a sound designy kind of hook, but it's very close to the bass line, so you can almost stick these guys together, but not quite. So a unique little thing here. Okay, so you can see really simple. At this point, we've had 16 bars of pretty much the same thing through the intro, 16 bars of pretty much the exact same thing through the bass drop, right? There's not a lot of changes going on. So this track is kind of just staying pretty level, pretty flat. But now, so that was the end of the bass line. We taught people the bass line. I'm sorry, that was the end of the bass drop. We taught people the bass line. Now we're going to transition into break one. And the important thing to do in break one is basically, obviously, give people a break. So we're going to remove the groove in some way, but we're also going to introduce a hook or something new or something different. So we're going to remove the groove and we're going to insert the hook or something. Let's see. And there you go. Okay, we removed the groove and we got something new and different. Those two boxes have to be checked. And that's what's happening right here. It's a motherfucking lip, bitch. With those scary ass stutters. Smack your ass. All right, so that was the A section. Right, so most of these sections and most tracks, whenever you have like the intro, bass drop, break one, hook drop one, main break and build, hook drop two, outro, most of the sections are going to be clearly divided into an A section and a B section. And maybe we'll touch on that. You can see right here in the drop, A section, B section, hook drop two, A section, B section, outro, A section, B section. And right here in break one, A section, B section. And when it comes to the breaks, like break one here and then the main break and build over here, typically the A section of the break is going to be a proper break where you're not trying to give any kind of directional energy, right? So when we get into the B section of a break, that's when we will introduce what we could say is directional energy or tension, right? So we're taking them somewhere. That's what I mean by directional energy, is we're letting the listener know we're taking them somewhere. So for the breaks, the A section is usually the break. We're just chilling. And then in the B section of a break, that's usually the build, okay, where we're building tension. And yeah, so now we're probably going to get something that builds tension and takes us into hook drop one. So this is priming us, it's preparing us for a change. We are going somewhere new. That's what the break is telling us, and then that gets paid off. That tension gets released when we move into the hook drop. So we've got the hook. So at this point in the track, we've got the groove, we've got a hook, and then now typically what happens in the HD2 formula is those two come together over HD1. And I forgot what happens here, so we'll see what happens. Most of the time that's what happens, but we'll see. So here we're going to be in the build section, and let's let that tension build. Here we go. It's a motherfucking lip, bitch. Keep talking, I'm gonna come over there and confiscate your motherfucking lip, bitch. With your scary ass stuff, I was going to smack your ass. Okay. So very, very gentle build elements there. The only thing that we really have is a little bit of a white noise riser right here. Okay, now there is an underlying tension here. The underlying tension here is that he's kind of step by step removing the groove. And so as a listener and someone in the club, you know the groove is going to come back. And so that just builds a little bit of underlying tension. Because you know it's going to come back. You're just waiting for it. You're waiting for it. You're waiting for it. And then these other little things that you can add in the build section, like a white noise riser, those just build off of the, that's just confusing. What's another way of saying this? They just kind of enhance or tap into that kind of tension. They enhance the idea that we are going to go somewhere new. You know, and so the underlying tension of a break section is the fact that the groove isn't really there. Okay, people know it's going to come back, so that's where the tension is. And then these other little things like the risers, or like if you're going to do like a snare roll, those kinds of things just kind of tap into that tension and they build it up even more. They create even more anticipation for when everything comes back in, and that's what HG1 is all about. So like I said, HG1 is going to be hooks over groove, and so let's see what the hooks are going to be over the groove. Here we go.
But don't carry ass stuff. I was boogity smack your ass.
So pretty much just going back to the bass drop here. Let's see if there's any what I would call elevations. Elevations are a way of naturally developing a track, because producers always want to know, like, how do I make HD2 different, for example, than HD1? And you don't necessarily want to make them too different. For example, it's a good idea a lot of times to have the same structure or same hook structure. So if the A section of hook drop 1 is a vocal and the B section of hook drop 1 is some kind of sound design element, then you want to kind of keep that same structure over here in HD1, because this is, people like this. This is cool. You take it away and then they simply want to hear it again, right? It's just like a pop song. A pop song is, you have a chorus and then you have a verse, but people just, don't bore us, get to the chorus. They want to hear the chorus again. And so you give them the chorus again. But where elevations come in, and even with pop music sometime, is you have a first chorus and then the second chorus builds up in some way. So maybe there's more vocal harmonies, maybe there's more drum elements, maybe there's more musical elements, whatever. It's just building, but the same underlying structure is happening. We're just elevating in different ways. Okay, and so what I want to see here is, here in HD1, is there what I call an elevation over the bass drop? So let's see. And the answer to that question is no. They're pretty much the exact same thing. So this is interesting. Let's see how this develops. How is this going to develop? Let's check it out. So that's a new little thing. So we got a little clap fill right there. So that just creates a little bit more excitement. We didn't get that, I don't think, over here. Yeah, no, just that little DJ scratch. Okay, so I don't want to get too deep into this in this video, but basically what's happening here in the first 8 bars is we're getting what I call punks. Okay, punks stands for punctuation points. So basically, if you think of an English sentence, then you can have like a comma in the middle of the sentence, then you can have a period at the end of the sentence. And a period is a more dramatic punctuation mark than a comma, right? And so punks really are all about the grammar. You can think of an 8-bar section or a 16-bar section or even a 32-bar section. And so what we have here is we have a little clap fill at the 4-bar mark. Then we have a more dramatic clap fill at the 8-bar mark. Okay? And those are the punks. They are the punctuation points of this 8-bar section. You could think of that 4-bar clap fill as like the comma, and then the bigger clap fill at the end of the 8-bar section as the period. Okay? And so that's all that's going on here. So he's basically taking this bass drop, he's putting it over here, but the elevations, this is a slightly sophisticated, advanced elevation, but he's using punks to elevate things. So one of the ways that you can elevate a track is just to put a bigger hat in here. You can hear how small this hat is, right? It's just a tambourine, basically. But you could elevate this section by throwing in a 909 hat, right? That would elevate HD1 here over the bass drop, because we get this bigger, more aggressive hat. And that's one way to elevate a section over and above a previous section. It's just add in a bigger open hat. Another way to elevate a section would be to throw in a ride. Anything that just takes the energy from here and moves it up a little bit. But another way that you can elevate a section is to have more dramatic punks. And this is an example of that. So I'm going to write this down just so I can have it as a reference here. So elevation in HD1 equals more dramatic punks. Okay, over and above the bass drop, BD. And what are they? These are just clap fills at, and I'm going to write P4 for the punk that happens at the 4-bar mark, and P8. Okay, there we go. So let's just write that down. All right, so now let's get into the second 8 bars. Another thing really quick too, this P8 wasn't just a clap fill. We also had this kind of interesting alien-esque kind of reverse. Hear that? I mean, that's simple, but it's a little bit of an elevation, right? So the P4, the clap fill, okay, so that you can hear the P8 there is bigger than the P4, and that's important because that builds into the concept of grammar and punctuation. So now we're in the second 8 bars. All right, perfect. Okay, cool. So what I said is before is that most of these sections are going to be divided into an A section and B section. And right here, instantly, that's exactly what we're getting. So we could define the A section of HD1 as the bass drop over here, the bass drop groove plus some clap punks. Okay, and this is going to be P4 and P8. Okay, and then now we're going to get into the B section. And so the question for A section, B section is, what is the defining element? And that's what this is. So this is kind of, we can think of the definition of the A section for this track, for HD1 at least. And now, what's the identity, what's the definition of the B section? Let's see.
It's a motherfucking list. With your scary ass stunner. Smack your ass.
So extremely simple, right? I mean, it's just, here we have the bass drop groove still. There's not too much elevation. The only thing is we have a tops lift, okay? So you can hear that. There's like a live hat that kind of comes in that just accents things. And then there's also this so check it out. I'm going to play it over here too, just so we can avoid the vocal. So nothing crazy, just a little bit of a tops lift plus a little bit of a live hat accent. And then the big thing is in the first 8 bars of the B section here, we're getting the vocal. Okay, the second 8 bars of the B section here, we're still keeping the tops lift, but the vocal hook goes away. And the reason why, let's make a note of this. The Vox hook goes away in HD1B, so this stands for HD1, the B section. Here's HD1, here's the B section of HD1. Okay, so the Vox hook goes away in HD1B second 8 bars. To, and I'm going to write this in all caps here, settle the energy. Okay, because what we're doing is we're going to work our way down. And so another way to think about this is that he is stepping down. The producer is stepping down the energy here so that we can step down even more as we go into the main break and build. And so that's it. HD1 is really simple. We've got just the bass drop groove basically with some punk claps, some clap punks at the 4 and the 8. And then in the B section, we've got the vocal. So in the B section is where we get the proper hook drop, okay? The proper hook drop, which is hooks over the groove. And so this is just vocal over the groove. And just like I said before, the really important thing is here in the bass drop, we're just introducing the bass line, and then in the bass, in the break right here, we're taking the groove away. So let me rephrase that. In the bass drop, yes, we're dropping the bass line, but in the bass drop, what we're really doing is introducing the groove. Okay, introducing the groove, and then in break one, we're taking the groove away in some way. We're not completely eliminating it, but we're just taking it away in some way. And so here, it's obviously not the same. Okay, so there's no open hat or offbeat tambourine. So they're taking away the groove in some way. So in the bass drop, we're introducing the full groove. In break one, we're taking the groove away in some way, and we're introducing something new and different, which is the hook. So in the bass drop, groove. In break one, hook. In hook drop one, groove plus hook. Okay, let me say that again. So in bass drop, groove. Break one, hook. HD1, groove plus hook. All right, and that's what I call, this is what I call the HD1 equation. The HD1 equation is simply, so HD1 equals the bass drop, which is the groove, plus break one, which is the hook. Okay, this is a perfect example of that, right? And so, but that really, the HD1 equation, what I'm saying here, is really getting paid off right here. Okay, so we're keeping things chill. We're adding in some little dramatic kind of clap punks, but we finally get that payoff for the hook drop, hooks over groove, right here in this section. And then we're going to settle the energy as we move into the main break and build. So let's go ahead and now get into the main break and build.
Get your motherfucking lip, bitch. With your carry ass nutters.
Exact same thing as before. So we're taking the groove away in some way. And I'm just going to put some way, right? It doesn't have to be, I mean, there's so many different ways to do it, right? We could take away all the tops, so we have just the kick and the bass. We can take away the kick and the bass, so we're just left with the tops, right? I mean, there's so many different ways to do it, but you're just taking the groove away in some way. And then for the main break and build, we got to build some tension back to HD2, all right? So here, let's see what happens. So here, the question for me is, are they going to elevate this section over and above what happened over here? And a good practice is to actually build more tension right here. The reason why you can really prolong this and build more tension than you do back here is because people have already heard this part and they like it, right? This track's number one. People like this part of the track, and they know it's going to come back. They know over here, the listener, subconsciously, they know it's going to come back. And so they're just waiting for it. And this whole section, the main break and build, is just really supposed to take it away from them and build the tension that, like, it's going to come back. It's going to come back. I'm going to make you wait for it, but it is going to come back. And so in the main break and build here, you can really prolong things. You can really build that tension so that when they finally get it back, they're like, yes, that's what I wanted, you know? And so here, what I think of for the main break and build is just to really feed off that craving, right? Feed off that craving, which is here. This is where you give them, like, you could think of almost like, this is a terrible analogy, but you know, this is like you're giving them the hit for the first time, and it's like, well, that was amazing. And then here it's like, oh man, I want it again. Like they come down off the high and they're like, oh, I want it again. I want it again. Oh yes, you know. So that's kind of the psychology of this part, which and that's why in the main break and build you can really, really, really build tension. And so all of this to simply say that I'm wondering, I don't know if it happens, I'm wondering if he's going to build more tension here than he did over here. And there's room and there's justification and there's grounds for why that is. Again, because people know what they're going to get again. They know they're going to get this again over here. Okay? And so that's why you can build that extra tension and just dive in and feed that craving. Okay, so let's see.
Smack your ass. Get your motherfucking lips, bitch.
That's really cool. Okay. So anytime, so one of the build, let's just write these out really quickly. So what can you do in a build section? Well, you can do a rep, you can do a roll, you can do a rise. These are the ways that you build tension: grow, and what I call a pipo. Okay. And so in the first break, what we saw was he had a little bit of a rise. Okay, and a rise is just, you know, that white noise riser right here. Right? I mean, if you even want to call it, I mean, it certainly is a rise. That's how I would categorize it. Over here, okay, don't have a rise, but what he has over here is a rep, and it's going to be on the hook rep. Okay, so this is what he has. He has a rep. Now, if you want to do like a crazy build section, you have all of these. A rep is just a hook repetition. So you take the hook and you just repeat it, basically. You'll hear this a million times. Roll is any kind of like snare roll, even a kick roll. Obviously, a snare roll is way more common. Another thing you do is rise, so a riser. Or another way to do a riser is if you have a synth and you're opening up the cutoff, or for example, if you have the drums low passed and you start opening up the cutoff on the drums, that's an example of a rising energy because things are just going up. Okay, and then finally, well, not finally, but another way to build tension is to grow the space, and so things just get bigger. Like they go into a reverb, they go into delays. That's just another way to build tension. And the way that growing works is when you throw things into a reverb or to a delay. If you look at me for a second, then what happens is imagine like the camera right here. That's the front of the mix. Okay, and so like me, I'm kind of a hook. Okay, I'm like the hook of a track right now. I'm kind of like a vocal, right? And so what happens is if we imagine the 3 dimensions of the mix, so I'm kind of pretty close to the front of the mix, which is most of the time you want the hooks close to the front of the mix. But what happens when you put a reverb into a build section is you start to move things away from the front of the mix. Okay? You can even hear me get further and further away. And so the reason why that's important is that when the drop finally comes back, boom, you're going to get this explosive moment where things go from the back of the mix right to the front of the mix, and it feels much more aggressive and impactful. And that's kind of the power of growing the space. They're not growing the space here, but I thought I would just take a deep dive apparently. And then pipo is very simple. It's just pattern interrupt, pay off. That's what it stands for. Pattern interrupt, PI, pay off, PO. And that's not really going on here. By the way, if you want to see a build section that uses all these, go look at John Summit's La Danza. He uses all of these. But and there's a couple other tracks, but that's the one that comes off the top of my mind. But a pattern interrupt is when you have like a build pattern. So here's all the kind of like huge things that help you build a build pattern. Okay. And so you have all these things going, and that's the pattern. They're creating a pattern of building. We're building tension. We're building tension. We're building tension. And then with the pattern interrupt, you cut that. You stop it. The build interrupt the build tension and energy abruptly stops. Okay, you stop that build pattern, and then you deliver a payoff, and then you explode into the drop. Okay, so these are the kind of the 5 ways that you can build tension. All right, and in this case, we're really only getting one of them here in the main break and build, which is the hook repetition. Okay.
Get your motherfucking lips, bitch.
See that? I love that. And then it continues into the drop and smack yo. And that's something I've been hearing in a couple tracks lately. And I'm just going to go play those really quick. So what I want to show you here is a technique that I've really been hearing a lot more of lately, which is just repeating a hook in the break sections and then letting that continue to repeat into the drops. I love that. And I'm actually using this technique in a track of mine right now because I just love it so much. But let me play this from Toma Dale. Check this out.
Dale, toma, dale, te gusta esto, pues entonces dale, toma, dale, toma, dale, toma, 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 dale, toma, dale, toma, dale, toma, dale, toma, dale, toma.
So there's that one, and then there's another example I want to show you. All right, this is a track that was released on John Summit's new label, Off the Grid, and really cool track. One of the he had this Excursions EP kind of thing, compilation, and I think this Void track was one of the ones that performed really well. I mean, all of these tracks broke into the charts. It was insane. I think they all made it into like the top 50, maybe even all the top 30. But really cool collection of tracks. But check out this one with the Voy Voy. This one has that technique where they repeat the hook in the break. All right, so you get the hook repetition, which builds tension, but then that continues into the drop. Check it out.
Quiero, voy, donde quiero, voy, 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 papi, voy, 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 voy.
That's so sick. All right, and that's kind of what's happening over here. Like, so this is a good example of an elevation. So how is this elevated? How do we develop the next drop over the first one? Well, the only thing that's going on here that's kind of different is they're letting that deet, 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 that vocal chop just kind of carry over the drop, and then they kind of mess around with it over here, slow the rhythm down a little bit. But the underlying structure is the exact same. Why? Because we're getting those punks. We're getting those clap punks that we were getting before around the 4. Okay, they were getting that clap punk right there. The only thing that's different is just that little hook that's playing, that's carrying over from the momentum of the build section. There's a little bit of a grow. Okay, that's a little bit of a grow right there in the drop, building tension to tell the listener we're going somewhere else in this next 8-bar section here. So so listen to that. You can hear the vocal kind of going out into a reverb. Also listen for the fact that we're probably going to get another clap fill right here, because here we had a P8 clap fill. So a clap fill at the 8-bar mark, and then we're probably going to get the same thing over here. But again, the only difference is we're getting that vocal chop, and this vocal chop at the end of the 8 bars is growing. It's going out into a reverb. Check it out. Awesome. And then we just go right down back into the second 8-bar section that we have over here. So I love that. This is so simple, where they have that simple hook repetition, which is a little bit different than the kind of build energy that's going over here. Over here, it's pretty chill, and then we get a very small white noise riser. And then over here, we're getting a slight elevation in the tension that's built by doing that vocal chop repetition. And the momentum that's generated by that vocal chop repetition continues into the first 8-bar section. And so we have a nice elevation in HD2 over HD1. And it's just so simple, but it's so good from a psychology standpoint and a tension release standpoint. And then we just kind of goes away. Okay, and so we're then going back to the underlying structure here in HD1, and so you better believe over here in HD2, the B section of HD2, we're probably going to get something very similar to what happened over in HD1. Why? Because this is cool. This is cool. Why? We like this, and I want to hear it again. So that's what they're going to do. We'll see. Nice. So a little bit of a difference here, okay, because we're not getting the vocal in the B section. So over here we have the vocal, but over here we don't. Let's see what happens in the last 8 bars, and then we can break this down. We are getting those tops lifts though. So we're getting, so again, it's a similar structure. We're getting the tops lift, we're getting that live hat accent, and we're getting the ch-ch-ch-ch-ch. So now we're in the second 8 bars of the B section. So why didn't he give us the hook here? Okay, and it's the exact same reason why he took the hook away over here. He took the hook away over here so that we can step down into the main break and build. And so here what he's doing, instead of continuing to develop up, so when we're thinking about developing and elevating, good God, developing and elevating, and producers want to know, how do I develop, how do I make my second drop bigger than my first, right? We always are thinking kind of like additively. I need to do more things. But this is a great example of how as we transition into the outro, he's doing less things. All right, and so that's what's interesting here. Here we have the hook, and then he takes that away because we are stepping down into the main break and build. But here in the entire B section, he doesn't give us the hook at all. Why? Because we are stepping down into the outro. Okay, so that's why the hook isn't here. All right, but we did get an elevation right here. Okay, so right here in the A section, we got that nice little vocal chop elevation that we didn't get over here, and that's just carrying the momentum. This section right here, I mean, right here, I wish I could use my finger to point to it, but like, you know, just right there, this is the most important part of the track, and you can see that he creates some momentum with that vocal chop, and that just carries over, and it's so good. It's so good. And then we just get back into the normal kind of thing, and then we get the tops lift, but we don't get the vocal lift because we're stepping down into the outro. So here we are, let's get into the outro. So a very similar thing right here. So just reusing transitions, which is really cool. And so this is basically going to be your reverse intro bass drop. So here we're going to have groove, here we're going to have beats, right? And then in the intro, it's opposite. Here we have beats, and then we have groove. And the outro is a place to not do anything. An outro is a place to give DJs looping options. That's it. It's not to do any songwriting. It's not to do any storytelling. It's not to do any developing. It's not to do anything creative. I mean, the more creative things you do in the outro, the more you're shooting yourself in the foot. The more you do in the outro, less and less and less people are going to play your track, because you're just making it hard to mix out of your track into the next track, right? And so this is just for DJ. The track really, for me, just goes from the bass drop to the end of HD2. Intro, just beats. And then the outro is the groove, and then you break it down to the beats. Okay, now we'll get into the beats. Okay, a little bit of there's no sub, but they're keeping some of that kind of textural stuff going on, which is fine, you know, whatever. You can loop around that. That's pretty easy to mix out of. But that's it, okay? So really cool stuff. So simple, but what I hope you see is that the simplicity is how should I put this? The simplicity is powerful, right? Because the things that are done, it's not about doing the most. It's about doing the least. And this is a great example of that, of the little things that are done. They're very powerful. Think about this, okay? Pretty much the entire song, The entire song is this groove right here. This is it. So imagine you're making this song, and you just come up with this groove right here. Okay. What other things happen on top of that groove? Let's write them down. Okay, what other things happened on top of that groove? So we have the groove, and then what else happened on top of that? Well, in HD1, we had the vocal play. Okay, that kind of like ambient, the echoey vocal thing, right? Okay, that was introduced, of course, in the break 1, because that's the HD1 equation. Bass drop plus break 1 equals HD1. HD1 is hooks over the groove. The groove is introduced in the bass drop. The hooks is introduced in break 1. Okay. Okay, so we have the groove, and what else happens over it? Well, again, in HD1, we have the echoey hook thing that happens. This is HD1. What else happens? Well, we have a kind of tops lift. Okay, and this is HD1 and HD2. What else happens over it? Okay, well, in the main break in HD2, we have the vocal chop carry over from main break and build, and this happens at HD2. That's it. That's it. Okay, so we have the groove, and then these 3 extremely simple things happen on top of it. So this is a great example of not doing the most, but doing the least. And of the things that you do, making sure that they're powerful, right? So this vocal right here in HD1 that plays right here, that pays off the HD1 equation. Okay? Here we introduce the groove, here we introduce the hooks, and then finally they come together. That gets paid off right here in HD1, where the hooks finally come over the groove. Okay, and the first 16 bars, we're just continuing the groove, continuing the vibe with a little bit of a punk elevation with those clap fills. But this guy right here is doing something extremely powerful, which is paying off the HD1 equation. And that is putting the hooks over the groove. Okay, and then the tops lift, that just gives us a little bit more energy in the second half, in the B section. So of HD1 and in HD2, we get that hooks lift. And that's just to kind of develop the groove just a little bit. Very, very subtle, though. Very not crazy. And then finally, this is doing something really important too, which is carrying over that momentum and that energy, that tension from the bass drop. So right here, I'm sorry, from the main break and build, specifically the build. Do you feel how much energy that has compared to everything else? Even right here, this is just kind of ambient, kind of spacey stuff. So what has the most energy? It's right there. Right there, right? So good. But again, like, let me just go back to the simplicity thing. That's all that's happening. So the things that are being done are extremely effective, and it's over a strong groove with just these little things on top. And so that's the one thing I really want to highlight about this track. If you got any questions, if you got any other things or insights that you want to share about this track, leave a comment down below, and I will see you in the next breakdown. Peace.